All right, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Welcome to the sixth Practitioners Series from the Center for Academic Integrity in the UAE. We are quite excited to be back this year with a series of, again, panel discussions with exciting people. The whole idea behind the Practitioners Series came from our co-founder, Professor Christopher Hills, who is a professor of education at the British University in Dubai and vice president for the center. The whole idea of the platform was to create a safe space for all of us to come together and discuss what are the kind of challenges that we face, what are the kind of good practices that have really worked in our classroom, so we can share those experiences with colleagues and peers, and we can maybe take something back to our classrooms and make our students' learning journeys better, more enriched, and of course, more positive. So with that, I am really, really excited to actually be introducing for the very first time the Center for Academic Integrity in the UAE's Executive Faculty Committee. This is a brand new committee that has come together. The whole purpose of the committee was we realized we wanted to make space for more faculty members to come on board because there's so much passion and so much interest, not just in practice, but also research in this area within UAE and beyond within the region. So we've wanted to do this for a while. We sent out a call, and then we got some really amazing nominees come forward. And we are very happy to be able to introduce them at today's Practitioner Series. And they're effectively the ones that are actually going to be leading the discussion today with us. So I will start off with, on my screen, I see Sylvia first. So Sylvia, it comes to us from Khalifa University. Sylvia, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor. I'm a senior lecturer at Khalifa University. I started teaching there about 2 years ago, right in the middle of the pandemic. So I got lucky to get a job right in the middle of the pandemic. And I teach in the English department. I mostly teach writing composition to first-year undergraduate students. And prior to that, I was working on my dissertation, in applied linguistics. And before that, I was in Kuwait, where I was teaching English language courses.
I was muted.
Oh, okay. I was like, do I need to say something else?
This, and you think by now we know when to press mute and unmute.
One more thing. I am interested in academic integrity. I actually published an article recently that I co-authored with a colleague of mine from the American University of Sharjah, Rachel Buck, and which is how I got into this executive committee. So thank you for having me.
Woohoo! And as I was saying when I forgot to unmute was, it's so exciting to hear your background, that you've come from a background of teaching students second language. And I'm sure it's going to be really exciting to hear from you today on the kind of challenges and the kind of good practices that you've brought into your class, particularly during the pandemic. So absolute pleasure to have you as a member of the center, as a member of the faculty committee, and to see some great things happening in the center with you. Welcome. Next, I have Irina. Irina, who's, I usually say hi, Saj, but I know that's wrong, so I'm trying to get it right. Huisa? Is that
yes.
Right? Yes.
Yeah, very colloquial. Yes.
I'm getting it.
Well done. Yes.
So Irina and I myself, we have a long history because we are colleagues at the University of Wollongong in Dubai. But I would still like to hear from you, Irina, and hear a little bit about you so that our audience can know about you as well.
Oh, yes, I work at University of Wollongong in Dubai. I, just like Sylvia, have started as an English teacher. So I worked as I've been with University of Wollongong in Dubai since 2008. Prior to that, I've taught English in Albania and in the UAE, in companies before university. And my interest, well, I was, first I started as ESL teacher, and then I moved into the undergraduate teaching. When I moved into the undergraduate teaching, that was a time when I realized that the skills that the students have were very limited. When you talk from an ESL perspective, as far as students are able to communicate, that's good enough, because basically that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to make them able to communicate. However, when it comes to academia, that's a different thing altogether. So that was the time that I got interested in many things, actually. And then I started my PhD. My PhD is in academic integrity and writing skills and technology. So I've put together all these components of what we are struggling with, actually. And yes, I love publications. I've published not quite, but I've published. I'm very happy that I've been able to. Obviously, I've had Zina there by my side, and we have published on different topics, all related to academic integrity. With other colleagues from HCT, from University of Dubai, from Malaysia, from Canada, I have published on different aspects of teaching English to ESL students. And yeah, that's all. Nothing more about me. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm glad to be here, though. I'm very glad to be here, and I'm so happy that this is actually starting. So that's a good thing.
Yes, yes, it really is fantastic. And again, another person from English language. So I think that in itself kind of speaks volumes about where the work happens in the ground. And, you know, as academics, I think we realize that, you know, that's we are all in a very multicultural society. We are teaching a very multicultural cohort of students, and we kind of understand that, you know, there is a need to support students in certain ways for certain purposes. And, you know, that's the only way that our education can be accessible and inclusive. So welcome, Irina. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here as well. As part of the faculty committee and sharing it. So I then moved to Sivapriya. Over to you, Sivapriya. Very different from all of us, I think, in a background. So it will be really interesting to hear from you.
Hi, I'm Sivapriya from Gulf Medical University. And my background is different, and I'm from health sciences, physiotherapy. So I'm associated with Gulf Medical University for past 10 years. So I'm dealing mostly with undergrad students from different backgrounds, physiotherapy, health care, imaging, lab sciences. So it's a different fraternity here. And so the reason why I'm interested in academic integrity is, for me, it's about like students knowing professionalism, the basic professionalism. That's the ultimatum of integrity. It's not just about scoring marks and moving out of the university, and being a good professional shows an integrity. So I feel that should be inculcated with every student, right from year 1 to however they are, wherever they are. It has to go on with their professions. So that's my intent which brought me into this. I thank Dr. Gomati, who introduced me to this club, and I'm really happy to share this platform with Dr. Zinat, Dr. Reena, and Dr. Sylvia. I'm so glad to share the thought process here. Thank you so much for this introduction.
Thank you so much. And again, I think Gulf Medical University does deserve a special mention here. They were one of the very first universities, not just as an individual, Professor Gomati, but Professor Gomati, Professor Amanda, the students, the entire university has been so supportive of the center and of the work that we do at the center. You know, a majority of our student board and active committee of the student board is made up of students from Gulf Medical. And that says volumes about, you know, the kind of commitment the university has. And in fact, they were the first institution that signed a consortium agreement with the center and became a center associate member. Where University of Wollongong in Dubai is a host campus. The next campus to recognize the center was Gulf Medical. So it's an absolute pleasure, Sivapriya, to have you here, to be one of our champions, very strong champions for the center and advocating for the work that we do.
Pleasure is mine.
Because we are missing a person, I'm just going to quickly share the screen once again. I'm sure most of our audience have already seen this invite that had gone out. We do have a fourth person who is a member of the committee, that is Ms. Namita Bhatia. She is head of year 10, and that's at GEMS Cambridge International School. Again, Ms. Namita is quite passionate about in informing her students about academic writing skills, study skills, about the integrity values. And in fact, she's reached out to us quite a few times before joining and had the center go and do sessions for her students. She's quite an advocate, again, for academic integrity, and she sees the real value in why we need to talk about academic integrity from a very young age in schools. So we are missing Ms. Namita. I do hope she's able to join us at some point, but just in case she isn't, we are definitely missing her voice today in the conversation, bringing in that element of understanding from this high school perspective. So now that we're kind of done with the introductions, I would maybe go backwards and start with you, Sivapriya. Now, we're hopefully coming into this new normal post the pandemic, the insane craziness that we saw in the last 2 years, 2.5 years of on again, off again, going online, not online, trying to do hybrid, trying to be blended. And we've obviously, all of us in our spaces have faced challenges because we were doing remote learning. We were heavily suddenly dependent on technology. So maybe I'll begin with you, Sivapriya, just to understand the kind of challenges you saw in your space from as a health educator.
Yeah. So the first challenge, what I would say as a health educator, is the students totally lost the contact with the patients to learn. It was the first thing, because as a healthcare students, they have to interact with the patients. They have to talk to them. They have to understand. That was totally lost during the pandemic. So like that, I would say that created a kind of tussle in the whole curriculum on how do we go to match up this for the students. There were some students who were in final year. There were some students who are in year 1, year 2. We had a belief that we will be able to cope up for them. But for the final year students, we were totally lost on how we're going to conduct the practical examinations. Practicals require the patient contact. They have to do some technique on the patients. Yeah, it was like total disaster for the final year. So we will have to design some pattern of questions which they are going to answer by seeing some videos, by looking onto some case histories provided to them. And we had a challenge in creating assessments for them on how we can promote an integrated or an integrity-based authentic assessment system so that the students don't cheat. If we are just giving in multiple choice questions, students can easily pass the answers. So we have to design an authentic assessment for the students so that like they think, they have to preview, and they have to analyze and give the options. That was one of the major challenge faced. The second challenge was technology. At that particular point of time, we all must have faced this. Wi-Fi is not strong. The connection is very poor. I cannot write the examination. I cannot do the assessments. For some students, we will have to redo the exams. Yeah, though the whole class is giving exams, some students say, ma'am, I don't have good connection at home. So, okay, we will conduct for you later. So the students get to know the questions from the friends who had already completed the examinations. So again, create a new assessment for them. Yes, so that's second.
I think it's so interesting because like I teach computer science and ethics. So, but again, I think we came into that hiccup when we were looking at, like you said, the final year students who had to actually show us demos of the products that they were ultimately building. And then it would be very difficult because some of them are very hands-on, like, with virtual reality and things like that. But when it comes to what you're explaining, I think it's at a whole different level of, missing out on that experience of actually interacting with patients, right? And I think that's a real challenge. And I know from one of our very first practitioner series, as a matter of fact, where one of the case studies presented was by Gulf Medical. We had Professor Gomati and Professor Manda, who's the Vice Chancellor there, who presented a case study on the kind of software and technology they were using to kind of recreate that atmosphere with patients. And it really awed us that so early on that you guys had picked up on this issue and thought about what you could do. But I also hear from you about the kind of workload that kind of increased for the teachers every time you have to be that authentic. Because face-to-face, 100 students, maybe 1 or 2 might not attend. Online, exactly as you said, my Wi-Fi is not working, I can't do this now, I can't do that now. And from that 1 or 2, you'd probably have what, 10, right? So that volume increases, right? So at that, I think I will move to maybe Irina. Um, what would this have been a challenge for you when you're teaching English or study skills during the pandemic?
Yes, definitely. What happens with the English student, I mean, the students that take English as, generally take it in the first year, and obviously it's all the students, but the focus is on the students who have got an IELTS score of less than 6. And that in itself would mean that those students do not only lack the language skills, they lack even understanding of English language. And to be in the online platform and explain that whole thing, and then make them do assignments, it was a struggle. It was a battle. Now, when it comes to the assessments, however, I mean, early on, well, as soon as we knew that we are going online, obviously, like we all did, in 2 weeks' time, that's it. We switch off, we stay at home, and we teach from home. What I did with my subjects was the very same thing. That means trying to make it as student-oriented as possible. So generally what I did with my subjects was I put a reflective task in all my modules because I wanted students to think about whatever they did during the semester. And yes, they may have, they may had to go through struggles, which because of the online platform, I as a lecturer would not necessarily even know unless they tell me, because when they are in class, you can see. You can physically see the struggles of people, but in the online platform, unless the person tells you, you cannot. And it doesn't really matter how many times you encourage students to speak up, no matter how many times you put them to work in groups. The shy students will just be shy as they are, and they wouldn't speak. And other students may not think that what they have to say is as important as what the others have to say. So generally speaking, you actually miss, and that's the thing that I felt the most in the online platform. The assessment didn't really worry me because I tried to make them as authentic as possible. And I tried to put them in group works and reflective tasks. And I created drafts and then final versions of the assessment. So I could see what has happened in the draft and then could see what has happened in the assessment. So I would know the steps. But what I never understood, and I feel very guilty about, is what the students actually felt. Besides the frustration, but from a pedagogical perspective, I wouldn't really understand. I wouldn't really know exactly what those feelings were at that moment and how much they actually learned, because a lot of it was done in a rush. We have to finish this. This is week 10, week 9, week 11 is coming. We have to wrap it up. We have to do this. We have to do that. So yeah, that was something which I felt was basically not really right.
Yeah.
But the assessments generally, what I understood, one thing from the online platform was that with all the negative aspects of the, obviously, they're not negative aspects, they're just drawbacks of the online platform. One thing which I thought that was very good in the online platform is that besides the network issue, of course, which was always a reason for students not to do something, what I realized is that the online platform actually did give a voice to the shy students in a sense that they could message. They could just type something. In the classroom, they might not even speak, but in the online platform, they could type. So that in itself was another indicator that made me think that whenever we talk about students, if we have a reflective task in the end of the semester, that would give students the possibility of having a voice. And if they have a voice, they will definitely be themselves. So they wouldn't try to cheat and plagiarize because they know that their voice is heard. So yeah, that's what I would add to it.
Fantastic contradiction, because you're right. At one point, there is this opportunity where we don't know how our students are feeling because they are behind a screen. But at the same time, the remote learning did give this opportunity to certain students who were shy, otherwise would not have gotten a chance to kind of voice themselves, be known. But they kind of did shine because it was online. You could see the student, you could see the name on the video of the student's name, so it would stick in your head that there is that student. That's a fascinating challenge, isn't it, with remote learning? And I think that in itself also adds to how comfortable students are connecting with the content that you're teaching and ultimately leading to the academic integrity discussion that we are having. Again, fascinating insight, Irina. Thank you so much. So coming to you, Sylvia.
Yeah.
I really want to go back and talk a little first about your article that you wrote. And I think that largely kind of links with the kind of challenges we have seen during the pandemic. Please tell us a little bit about it.
Yes, so what my colleague and I did, we decided to basically find out from her students. It was a class at AUS, at the American University of Sharjah, that she was teaching. So I was just a researcher. What students know about plagiarism, right? What is it? And it was fascinating to see what they thought and how we then juxtaposed it to more formal understandings of plagiarism, for example, in the academic integrity book at the schools, right, that universities have. But then we went on to provide them a really, I think, a pretty interesting activity where we gave them different tasks. And let's say one of the tasks was to read Melania Trump's inauguration speech in 2016 and Michelle Obama's 2008 speech. And we just said, read it, see if you find any similarities or not, and you think this is an example of plagiarism or not. And so students would highlight the parts because there were definitely parts that were very similar. And then this whole discussion started. So they were put into groups. So first they had to do these tasks separately, and then we came together and we had this really great discussion, right? So some students said, no, absolutely, it was plagiarized. Others were kind of upset with Melania Trump because they said, you know, she has the resources, right, to actually get a speechwriter, right, to produce a speech that technically should be different, right? It shouldn't be so similar, not only in terms of language used, but also in terms of ideas. And then we go on to discussing, well, what can be considered plagiarism then? The ideas, the language, the organization of those ideas. And it just, you know, kept going and going and going. So what we came up with finally is that a discussion is necessary, but that at the end, it's really fuzzy what plagiarism is and isn't, right? It's not so clear cut. It's not so black and white. So that's the gist of our article.
And I think that's such a strong conclusion, because I think you're absolutely right that even now, no matter how much we learn and we practice, I think it's sometimes one of those things where it's not black and white. Right. And the more we discuss, the more we get ideas. Oh, even that could be plagiarism. Oh, even this kind of act or behavior could be plagiarism. So that's a fantastic and strong conclusion that you guys have derived from that paper. And that kind of takes me back to this question. Had you guys done this during the pandemic? So if so, was it online?
Yes, it was. It was the first semester that we were online. It was in March of 2020. So it was definitely a challenge to do it online, and so we had to, you know, record all the students, you know, ideas, and we had them do a reflective task similar to Irina did in hers, and we kind of analyzed both. Well, we analyzed their reflective tasks, their group assignments, and this classroom discussion that we had.
I think it's a great example of how what we try out in our classrooms and how that can actually lead to scholarship, right? Like this kind of publications that happen. I know Irina does tons load of this in terms of what she practices. And I think yours, this specific study, like really talks to the kind of challenges that we were facing in the pandemic and at the same time coming to that really strong conclusion. So do you think we are in a new era now that we are kind of out of the pandemic, hopefully?
No. There's still challenges. There's still challenges because I mean, in my opinion, this has been my experience these past 2 semesters that we were face to face. Well, especially this past semester. Last semester, it was just a couple of weeks of face to face. What I noticed is students got so accustomed to the online and to what Irina was saying about the shy students using the chat, using emojis to express their feelings. They were silent in my class. It was so, I almost felt like I wanted the online version again so I could get some interaction, get some chat going on. At the beginning, that was at the beginning, yeah? So they had to re-socialize themselves, right? With this whole, you know, face-to-face and learning, just the learning environment is so different because, you know, one of the challenges I think I faced being online was the fact that our university required students to not show their video. So I didn't see any faces for 2 years, basically. And I was just talking to the void. So similar again to what Irina said, I don't know if they were understanding what I was saying. I don't know. I couldn't see their faces. I didn't know if they were confused or a light bulb went out up. I have no idea. And so I don't know, I don't want to say the majority of students. I honestly don't think so. But there might have been a few students who may have taken advantage of this anonymity of this that the online environment creates, and perhaps had somebody else write their, you know, essays or assignments even there. I mean, I don't know if the student was there or not. You know, I have no idea. I have no idea. And even though I was breaking up the major assignments into small steps and seeing, but really, was that student really the person who was, you know, answering me and writing? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that was a huge problem, wasn't it? Like, our university didn't say anything about the video, but I don't think students just generally did not switch on their webcams, right? And I think this is something we've heard over and over across the board. Didn't matter which university, which country, which school. I think all teachers, all faculties were complaining about the exact same thing. Like, here's a generation that loves TikTok and loves taking selfies and Instas, and but all of a sudden now they did not want to switch on their cameras, right?
And in all honesty, I kind of understand because you're in a private space, right? You're not in a public space. You're in a private, you're in your home, you're in your living room. You might have brothers, sisters, distractions. And I kind of get why, you know, the university decided to have it.
Right.
You know,
yes, of course.
To not show the screens. I totally get that. But it was difficult.
Because that in itself led to, I think, a whole different conversation. I'm sure we could spend like another hour just talking about the digital divide and issues that raised with people who could switch on their cameras versus who couldn't or wouldn't switch on their cameras, right? And so, but coming back to this point that you said about, you know, coming back to the classrooms, and now after the first couple of weeks, everything seems to be back to normal. I have felt that too. But I think for what I thought about at that moment, and I remember thinking, was that the way the leadership in this country worked out the transitions, you know, and I think that really helped come back to the normal that we used to know. You know, they, like the ministry said, you're done. We are done with the pandemic. If students, you need to come back to classrooms. There isn't a choice. But I think had they not been that firm, I think we would have had a real struggle in our hands. Irina's laughing because I know we every now and then get students saying, oh, but I've got this and I've got that, and that's why I can't come. Can I continue online? And a lot of them still don't want to give up on that comfort zone that they had created for themselves. And you already pointed to how staying online like that behind those black screens, we have no idea who was really doing the assessments, how much they really were understanding. Right. So with that, I think I will move to Sivapriya. I know you already told us about the real issue of students not being able to come in contact with patients. But now that you guys are back on campus, have you seen a kind of withdrawal of students not having had that opportunity for the last year, 2 years, suddenly facing that kind of situation? And has that impacted assessments or the way you assess any kind of that experience?
Yes, I would say definitely it had an impact on the students when the students were back on campus. They showed an humongous interest in interacting with the patients. Usually when we tell them go collect the history from the patient, and they will be like, doctor, I just saw a patient, can I just go back? But now when we say like, okay, doctor, let me just take whatever case, like that created interest in them. What if I don't get to see patients in the next pandemic? What if something happens? So they were taking as many as patients as possible. It was like a good impact on the students that they were interested in doing it. And the other thing, what I would say from the faculty perspective, this pandemic had created a sense of creating or distributing the study materials itself in a different way than how we were used to do it in the classroom. In the classroom earlier, when we just used to write some line, and when we used to describe everything there. But since now we know that whatever we are teaching is going to be recorded, we are ensuring that whatever we talk is some way displayed in the screen, and we post this under some category of copyrights in our learning management system. So we have to ensure that everything is being properly cited before we post it there for the students. And we created such, like, what if student is cannot able to see it? What if student is not able to? Some students, they used to ask us, doctor, could you please, we saw the recording, could you please give us a transcript for us? Could you please give the notes for us? So they were asking different type of study materials to us. So we were trying to create different types of study materials to students. So what happened, since we're creating different types of study materials for students in all possible ways, it became very easy for us to do the assessments now, post-pandemic. It had become very easy for us. Now we know the pulse of the student, what they want, how do they want, how, and we also know what we have really wanted. And we have seen all types of behaviors from them, good, bad, mediocre behaviors. We anticipate all sort of things now, and we create content in such a way that it is really taking the best out of the students. So post-pandemic, I feel it's not just the students, and as a faculty, we developed in all areas of the pedagogy what we give. And one more thing, what Ajina mentioned about that she's interested to know about from the student side, I hope we should host a panel discussion, including some students next time, to understand what do they feel.
Absolutely. I loved what you said there about students suddenly realizing that, they had taken this experience for granted, that you could just walk up to a patient, and suddenly with the pandemic, they realized that you couldn't. Before I continue with you, maybe I want to throw this back at the other two, Irina and Sylvia. Have you seen that in students, that realizing what they have in terms of face-to-face experiences, or sitting and doing group work discussions, or is it something very specific to health education? Irina?
It depends. When we talk, the students that we get at Wollongong University are from, you name it in the world, and they are from there. So the multiculturalism that we get is so diverse And those students have an added challenge in the classroom environment, which I never thought that existed until we went back to classroom, and that is fitting in every classroom. That sort of social gathering, which they never had it. In the online platform, they're just anonymous people sitting behind a screen. They did not have to really interact much with the others. Their main focus was just to listen, ask questions, show that you are there, so you are not asleep, or like Sylvia is saying, your sister is not sitting in front instead of you and is not talking on your behalf. But that was it. While in the classroom, the challenge is real. And on top of that, there is, of course, that social, the social distancing brought along some sort of real distancing. So when you talk about the freshmen coming from their countries, after struggles of will we be able to travel, will not be able to travel, we just went through a pandemic, we had this and we didn't have this, and now we have that. So when you look at that whole thing, I think that the students, at least this semester, I've noticed that the freshmen are a little bit more cautious about who they are, what's their identity, and how they can fit in, and what is acceptable, what's not acceptable. So this is what I have basically realized, and I'm very curious to actually see their work, because generally there is always that peer pressure. And in this case, the peer pressure, I feel like, is not even known. You don't even know what the expectations of others are, because you don't even know the others. So I'm really curious to see what will come out of their work. I generally put them to work in groups with people that belong from other countries. And I on purpose say to them that I will not let you work with some other human being that speaks your language. You'll have to work with another human that does not speak your language. So I'm very curious. I haven't seen any huge challenges, but I have definitely noticed this. The identity that basically the social gathering creates, which is needs to be basically not developed, maybe it's there, but it needs to be seen and it needs to be recognized.
And understood, yeah. And I think it, especially because you guys teach language, it would create a huge barrier, right? If they ended up only sticking to their friends who speak the same language, because then they don't have a need to try and practice English, which is what they're there to learn and practice, right? Sylvia, how about yourself?
Well, my instructional context is quite different, because I would say that maybe 95% of the students are Emirati. So yeah, so it's very homogeneous.
Right.
So there isn't a language barrier in terms of, because I allow them to speak Arabic in the classroom when they're like doing group work. I know they're on task because I hear paragraph in English, you know, I hear these terms, yeah, every once in a while. So I know they're on task, and I'm okay with them using their first language. That's absolutely fine. What I have found, and like I said, I don't know if this was the case online because of the black screen, I couldn't see them, but face to face, what I've seen is they're overwhelmed. These students are overwhelmed. I feel like I don't know, I had several students come to me wanting mentorship, wanting guidance, not only about their writing in general, because, you know, spending 18 months or 2 years in front of a screen and not moving for your 5 different courses, it's all right there. Yeah, and then just thinking about being face-to-face, moving from one classroom to another, and it's really overwhelming. And I think as educators, we need to acknowledge this, right? We need to acknowledge the difference in learning environment and how it affects the students.
Yes. And I think it's exactly what you said. We need to recognize it because it's very important. All of these conversations, if somebody right now joined our conversation, they'd be wondering why we're talking about this. But this has a very big, connection to academic integrity, because this goes back to how comfortable they were in class, enough to actually listen and pay attention to what the teacher was saying.
And to ask and to have an open an open conversation, right, about academic dishonesty, about plagiarism. Come to me and say, doctor, is this okay, or do I still need to rephrase it, paraphrase it even better? Having these open discussions and not making students feel like there are only punitive consequences, right? To have an open discussion, I think is important.
Absolutely. So with that, going back to Sivapriya, because we kind of started off with you and then we kind of moved on to Irina and Sylvia. So now that we are here, we're almost finishing at least one semester or trimester completely face-to-face. Do you feel there is a change in attitude in students because of the pandemic towards academic integrity values, or this, easily accessing things on the web for looking for solutions or answers on the web versus trying to come up with these solutions by themselves, or looking at file sharing sites, or things like that? Do you see a lot more discussions happening in classroom versus students trying to get on their devices and trying to get answers? What has been your observation like?
I would say, like Ajina said, depends upon the student. How was their experience in schools? Some students, they had a very good experience at schools. So they had utilized the opportunities on going to different areas, collecting more information and producing the results. Some students, the experience was not that great, and that has been reflected in the freshmen. Especially when we give any kind of task to them, they would be like always relying on the friends. We could see like there'll be some gang of students who will be there, and if we say any task, immediately they'll get up, they'll go and sit next to the school friend who was helping them in the school, and they'll be asking, tell me what it is, what they are trying to say. Like they wanted another person to translate in the peer language and tell them like what it is, and also help the file what is required. This is one group. There's another group of students who were well trained, probably from the schools or from the universities, who got an opportunity to review the material over and over again and get to clarify all their doubts. And now when we say something, they go and refer to multiple websites. They go and refer to multiple books, and then they come back to us and say, doctor, after your session, I referred to this, and this states in a different manner. Can we take this as an answer? So we have got the two diverse populations who are working beyond the mark, and some are still, I feel like they have to improve. They have to improve a lot.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting observation. Sylvia, how about yourself?
I see my students being really technologically savvy. They're really good. I don't know if it's their generation and I'm just slow with uptake, computer uptake in general. But I find them to be creative. I mean, savvy with so many different types of programs that they use, and I have them do a video presentation, and lots of times they just blow me away with their creativity, with their dedication to the work. I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed.
Yeah, so let me unmute first. So, so you've seen the transition to be quite okay from being online to now being in the classroom.
In terms of that, yes. Like I said before, I think students, I know I might be repeating myself, but I really feel that students are overwhelmed and anxious, and
yeah,
I guess they're scared. They're scared of failure, scared of not meeting expectations, their own expectations, their parents, their families, the teachers. So I think that several of my students wanted more of reassurance, right? So they were okay with the learning part, but they wanted a human aspect as well, of compassion, of reassurance, of guiding them. So yeah, that's what I've seen.
Just because you said that, I just remembered yesterday I had a 3-hour lecture, and then Usually my lecture follows with a consultation, like an office hour. And usually by after the end of the 3 hours, nobody wants to come back to me. But yesterday there was this one group, 2 boys, they kept coming back for an hour. They would come, they would ask me a question, they'd go back, "You're not leaving." I'm like, "No, I'm here." And they'd go discuss, they'd again come back. And again, they'd ask me a question, again, they'd go back. And I kept looking
It's
and
almost like
smiling.
hand holding, yeah?
Yeah, right? And I was smiling the whole time. And then they were like, "Oh, are you bugged?" I'm like, "No, I'm really happy that you're coming to me." They're like, "Yeah, we didn't want to just Google." I'm like, "Oh, that's even more better. Please keep coming."
Exactly. And I think
And
we ought to be approachable as educators, right? We ought to be approachable.
absolutely. And something you and Irina said again, and I wanted to point this out as well, and maybe Sivapriya can give us some medical background to this, was that when we're online and we're listening, we've kind of made ourselves become tone deaf to everything else around, except for what's in the screen, unless we don't want to pay attention, which is a different thing, right? But when they're in classroom, they're like people talking, whispering, there's the teacher talking. If you've got like a classroom that is towards the road, then there's cars passing by. And if the teacher happens to leave the window open, then you can hear honking and cars braking and screeching, and all of those noises also create distraction, right? And it's one of those things that they have to overcome suddenly, learn, maybe relearn to overcome when they're sitting in a classroom, and not just look down on their computer or on your phone and just switch off, because they have to be switched on the whole time they're in front of us. Have you guys felt that? And Sivapriya, is there like a is that something that happens psychologically, physically, in the physical space once we are back from an online space?
Something interesting which I have noticed is that students cannot sit more than 15 minutes in a class now. Being used to the online environment, they lie down in the sofa very comfortably and listen to their classes. Sometimes they even sleep during the classes, and they are okay to roam around when they're at home and when the cameras are off. But suddenly getting them back, giving them a chair, asking them to sit for an hour and listen to the lecture, what I'm going to give, like they were like kind of restless. I would say, like, I can see the movement within the classes is more. They get up, they say, "Doctor, can I go have water and come? Doctor, I'll just come, go to the washroom." So when one student gets up in between the class, we all know as educators how we will have the interruption, the flow of what we have to deliver.
Right.
When one gets up, then like I stop. And then like they also, other students will be like, "What is next?" And again, then everyone will be looking at the person who is going in, coming out. So I felt like this is more post-pandemic. This is my observation on the distractions which is happening between them apart from the external sources. They're
Right.
internally creating a lot of distractions amongst them.
Fascinating. We're almost at the last 9 minutes, so I want to leave a couple of minutes at the end for questions. So, Irina, any good practices that you have seen really work with your students post-pandemic in this face-to-face era that we are back again in classrooms, when it comes to academic integrity, ensuring students are really paying attention and doing the work, and you're being able to judge their effort?
Sure. When it comes to my subjects, I believe that academic integrity does not happen until the students actually understand the critical and analytical thinking. So when it comes to the language students, if they don't even have the skills to write, they will obviously cheat. And that is something which the online platform has made them masters of, because we never saw them online. We tried our best, but we didn't really see them. One thing which I've noticed, for example, after we came back to class, it was the use of Google Translate. I had never ever experienced students just taking the phone and keeping it in front of whatever is being displayed and reading from it. So the other day I went and saw I mean, there is a specific nationality, which I'm not going to mention, but basically there's like a whole group of people that do exactly the same thing. So I went to one of them. I said, "What are you doing with this?" He said, "This is Google Translate, but in our language." And I was mesmerized. I mean, they could translate everything And they didn't really have to ask me because everything was there for them in their language. So this made me think that if I don't develop critical thinking of these students and I don't connect them with what they are going to write, they will definitely cheat. So what I started doing was put them to, break down the concepts of the tasks and put them to debate on those concepts. So they would go back and forth debating on the concepts. And while they're debating, they are obviously trying to find the reason, they're trying to find the rationale behind everything that they're saying. So that has helped them with the development of their understanding. So I'm positive, hopefully, that wouldn't be a problem because I was really worried about technology taking over everything that we were doing. Not even mentioning artificial intelligence and not even mentioning the production of all the, full paragraphs that not necessarily make sense, but they seem quite similar to the original. And if you are checking those without paying attention, you may end up checking a robot and thinking that that was your human. So this whole thing, basically, that's all what I have thought of. And I've always been very close to my students. I've always tried to make them basically consider me not as their, I don't know what, someone that will punish them, but just as a human being that is trying to teach them. So with that and with the open door policy, with the consultation going back and forth, hopefully we will get some better results. Again, I don't know really until the assessment, until the assignments are submitted. I don't really know, but I don't know. But that's what I have tried to, and I feel like that they are engaged. I feel that they are talking, and I feel that they are excited about coming to class. So to me as an educator, I think that's good. Now, the end result, still to wait. So wait and see.
Fantastic. Sylvia?
Yes, I apologize. I got distracted online. My child needed my assistance, so I didn't catch the question. I'm sorry.
So basically the question was, any good practice that you have seen work now that we are here face to face with our students?
Okay, yes. So I try to, like I said before, break down the big assignment into smaller tasks. And I really try to have these smaller tasks done in groups as much as possible. I really think students need to learn how to work together again, bounce ideas off of each other, and grow in that way, right? So I try to have as many assignments, smaller tasks that are group oriented, and to have fun, obviously, in class, to learn, but have fun as well. What I noticed is students, since we're face to face, what I've noticed is students come to my office hours a lot. Yeah, they really do. They really do. And even though online I kept telling students, look, I'm available. You just need to, send me an email. We can meet online through Blackboard, no problem. But I hardly got anybody coming to me. Instead, during my office hours, I have to give students 5 minutes sometimes because I have a whole line of other students who want to see me. So it's I think it's great to be back face to face because of this human interaction that we have. And yeah, so I definitely think that just having them work in groups and to overcome the fear of even speaking in public, having them, explain what they're working on. It really is so different from what they've been used to for the past 2 years.
Yeah. I think that's very essential to remember. Absolutely. Sivapya?
Something which I have learned as a faculty in the post-pandemic discussion on this is about how to identify the student who are at risk from the beginning. Like when we were online, we were posting all the contents online. So what I used to do is to set criteria for viewing the material, set criteria for participating in the material. So whatever I upload in their course page, I created a course completion status of all the documents which I upload, and I tend to review every week on what is happening. So I get a report of who viewed the document, who did not view the document, who participated in the post. So I get to identify the ones who are not participating. So I used this during the pandemic to identify, because they're not talking, the cameras are off. So how will I get to know what is happening with them? So I go and see the logs in the learning management system. What is happening with them? Let me see. So now I'm using that principle here. As Sylvia was mentioning, that require a lot of mentorship now. So when I see the log, when I call them to my cabin to talk, see, so and so, I don't see you doing with this task. What happened? Oh, ma'am, thank you so much. Like, we were left all, like, we were not being bothered so much as an individual during the pandemic. But now, as you call me and tell me that I'm not doing it, I feel that you're giving some personal touch to me, or kind of personalizing the advice given to me. So I feel this learning analytics of identifying the participation in the online platform is a very useful tool. It's helping me in the post-pandemic era to identify them, give them advice, and make them like be involved so that they don't go in for any kind of other behaviors.
I think such amazing experiences you have shared, and I'm so happy that you guys I'm thankful that you guys have been so candid and honest about your experiences. I'm sure our audiences have taken a lot from this conversation that we've had. We are almost at the end. I want to take this opportunity to once again thank our newly formed Executive Faculty Committee for the Center for Academic Integrity in the UAE. Just listening to you guys this 1 hour, I think I'm even more super excited, if that's possible, for the year to come to see what you guys have in store for us, and how you're going to be taking the center forward. We are almost at the end. I would like to open up the platform for any questions from the audience. I know a couple of them left, and they left me private messages with questions. So I want to see if there's anybody here who's already attending who has a question. Otherwise, I'll just read out the question from the chat that was sent to me. So anybody from the audience, if you have a question for the panel, I'm happy to read that out, or I'm happy for you to just switch on your mics and ask. Okay. Thanks, Barak. All right, so let me read out the question that was left behind in the chat by one of the audiences. Said, thank you so much for sharing your insights. It's very interesting to hear. A lot of what you've said had little to do with the assessments, but a lot more to do with interactions and understanding our students. So kudos to each of you for bringing this to the forefront. When it does come to assessments, would you say just not repeating and just bringing in authentic assessments is the answer? Is there more that we can do when it comes to assessments and training our students? Anybody wants to go for it? I'm most welcome to. The panel is open. So Sylvia, Sivapriya, Irina, please, whoever feels like answering that question.
I feel it is not just with the assessments, authentic assessment. It also depends upon how we deliver the curriculum as well, and how we deliver the assessment. And there is something called the post-assessment analysis from the students on how they feel about the assessment and what is the feedback given on certain assessments. I feel like that is going to cause a different impact on the next assessment, what we're going to devise. So this is what I feel. Yeah, from the
Very
curriculum.
Yes. Yeah. Sylvia?
Well, I mean, the assessment is basically broken down into these smaller assignments, right? So I mean, these smaller tasks. I feel that having these smaller tasks really help the students, guide the students into, writing whatever genre that we're, dedicated to at that particular moment, semester. So I think, yeah, just having these, smaller tasks. And so far, I mean, especially those students who come see me and ask questions after class, they're doing great. They're really doing great. They're really motivated. They want to learn. They come with questions, and I think, like I said, it goes back to the fact that finally we're back face to face.
Yeah, absolutely. Irina?
I would think that, what I would say is that I absolutely don't think that it's enough. I think that the assessments, the thought of an assessment is never a joy. It doesn't bring joy into anybody's mind. It doesn't bring joy into our minds or anybody's mind. So the fact that you have to do an assessment is a burden. In the end of the day, it's basically something related to the subject that you have taken, but is a burden. So what I always consider as very important, and now more than ever, is that students need to connect with the matter that they are being assessed on. Either be in the curriculum design or in the matter that is being analyzed. So they have to find those links. And if they find the links, or even if it's like Silvia is mentioning, breaking down the concept, if they find the links, then the need to plagiarize is going to be less. I still believe that there are people who may still plagiarize no matter what due to XYZ reasons. But I think that if we create the links to the curriculum design and through our mentorship, I don't think that there is any student that wouldn't appreciate the lecturer giving an advice. I think that students all need our advice, and they feel so excited that they actually have the possibility of asking, and you are there to notice. So I don't think it's enough at all. I think that teaching itself is like this whole picture that is like a jigsaw that has many pieces, and all those pieces have to fit in their right place. So we can have a session, eventually a subject, and eventually a successful year. So hopefully, if all the pieces of the puzzle are put in their places, of course, we need the collaboration of students. We can't do it on our own. We can't, because then it will be our puzzle. Then it will be our puzzle, which doesn't make any sense. Because we teach so others can learn. We need them to collaborate with us, and then we all together create something great, hopefully.
Absolutely, I agree. I wish we could go on, but we are at the top of the hour, 6 o'clock. So we are at the end of our amazing panel discussion. Thank you so much, Irina, Silvia, and Sivapriya, for your time, for coming on board, being excited and passionate about academic integrity, and joining hands with us in this journey. It was my absolute pleasure to host you in this panel and to welcome you once again as the newly formed Faculty Executive Committee at the Center for Academic Integrity. And thank you, audience, for being here with us today, and of course for the questions that you posed as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.